If John Wick was a family man is the tagline Netflix decided to give its latest exclusive anime Sakamoto Days, and man is it accurate. This series is one of the more recent hits to come out of Shonen Jump alongside other recent series like Kaiju No. 8 or Dan Da Dan, both of which I've talked about on this channel, and while we're starting off this year strong with Sakamoto Days, it's time to ask the question of whether or not Christians should give it a watch. Let's first start though with some context for those who may not know. Sakamoto Days is the story of a man named Taro Sakamoto, who's also known as a legendary hitman and considered the greatest of all time, the GOAT if you will. That is, until he meets a pretty girl and decides to leave it all behind. He then gets married, starts a family, and opens his own neighborhood store and lives a quiet, peaceful life with his family. Until a former partner shows up and gives him the ultimatum of rejoining the assassin world or being killed for leaving, and then from there the antics ensue and we get on with the rest of the story. With that out of the way, let me ask the titular question again. Should Christians watch Sakamoto Days? And my answer is a wholehearted yes, and let me tell you why. When it comes to action shows, the main concern is usually an unnecessary amount of gore, especially when assassins or hitmen are involved, and while Sakamoto Days definitely has its fair share of blood pop up here and there, it's never anything too insane. This lack of violent gore stems from what the show establishes as a core value of the Sakamoto family, that being the rule of no more killing. Sakamoto made a living as a hitman by taking the lives of others. We're not told if he has some virtuous reason for doing so, or if he only targets bad people, but it's killing all the same, and even in the flashback, the anime uses a less than vibrant palette to set the tone of what he's doing. But then everything changes when he meets his wife Aoi and leaves that life of killing behind for better, brighter things. And there's actually a really good exchange between the two when he shows up to a date with blood on his hands and offers her a gift that he bought after working overtime. She tells him off and insists that if he can't stop killing, then they can't be together, before promptly jumping off a ledge, knowing full well that he'll rush to save her. When they crash into the snow below, Aoi makes the connection that in the same way he wanted to save her, everyone else, including his victims, have people they want to protect, and he then promises not to kill anymore and to spend his life from here on out helping people so that he can make up for the people he's killed. Murder is wrong. We as Christians know that, and I think even most atheists would agree, but as Christians we understand that killing people is wrong not just because God says so, but because every person killed is a fellow image bearer of God, and their life has innate value in being created by Him. A real-life example I think of is the assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. While it is a terrible thing to happen, many people lacked sympathy and even cheered it on by saying he got what he deserved. I'm not here to defend United Healthcare in any way. They absolutely have made bad decisions that screwed people over, and Brian Thompson may have been responsible for that. However, that doesn't excuse the fact that he was murdered in cold blood. How does this relate to Sakamoto Days? Well, think about Brian Thompson's family. Kids who had to spend Christmas without their father, or a wife who lost her husband. A family who is now mourning over the loss of a loved one while people online cheer and celebrate the killer. This is the point Aoi wanted to make to Sakamoto. If he mourns over losing her, imagine how other people feel when they lose loved ones, and it's this different perspective that convinces him to stop being a hitman. Sakamoto Days shows that human life has value even if the people are faceless goons who serve a mafia boss. Now, the prior story with Aoi and Sakamoto illustrates a couple key things. One, the concept of atonement for prior actions and sins, and two, finding and treasuring things that are more important than your work. For the first point, we as Christians believe in the redemptive power of Christ and his sacrificial death that wipes away all our sin. So while we don't have to work off our sin in the same way it's presented in Sakamoto Days, I think the concept still holds true. When you turn away from your old life and are renewed, you want to do things that are good and healthy rather than continue in old habits. In Sakamoto's case, this is turning from his old hitman job and dedicating himself to his family and his community, which is something we see in the very first episode, because Sakamoto goes around helping people with a wide variety of tasks, from pruning tree branches to helping a kid eat her vegetables, and his community knows they can rely on him to help whenever and wherever he needs to. This is also a way for him to repurpose the skills he learned as a hitman to benefit others rather than just taking lives, and even when he does get into confrontations, killing is never a necessity. He can still clearly and efficiently get the job done while still leaving those random goons alive to go home to their loved ones. Like I said earlier, as Christians, our redemption comes from Christ, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't strive to do better with the new life you're given. Aoi gave Sakamoto a second chance at life, an opportunity to do something greater and more beneficial to others, and that's not to erase the people he did kill, because that's a reality for him. It's something he has to deal with, but what's arguably more important is that he chose to walk down a better path when given the choice. And Sakamoto gives that same second chance to Shin by inviting him into the family and letting him work at the store so that he too can experience the freedom of no longer being a hitman, but I'll talk about Shin more in a minute. This ties into the second point of finding things that are more important than work and treasuring said things. In modern society, it's very easy to get swept up and think that work is the most important thing and without it you have no purpose, but that's simply not the case. Sakamoto's life before Aoi was dreary and filled with death, but that all changed when he met her. He found someone who was more important to him than the work he was doing, which is why he left his hitman days behind him. Aoi inspired a genuine change in someone who probably would have spent the rest of his life killing people for work, but it's through her that he was able to find a new life by getting married, starting a family, and having his own store that he can use to help the people in his community. Like I briefly mentioned, society puts such a large emphasis on the importance of work, and it's something especially felt by the younger generation, myself included, because we grew up watching our parents work all the time while trying to balance family life, and now that we're becoming adults, it feels like an endless slog of working far too much just to meet the bare minimum standards of living, and society has widely accepted that as okay. There's never any time for friends, family, church, or anything outside of work. But as more time goes on, people are starting to realize that there is so much joy to be found outside of working all the time. Hanging out with friends, building relationships, getting married, finding hobbies, all things that you find outside of work because, let's be real, work isn't everything. The show even addresses this outside of Sakamoto by giving us Shin's perspective. He didn't understand why Sakamoto left the hitman business simply for a cushy family life, thinking his talents were being wasted, until he experienced that life firsthand. Once he knew how nice life was outside of being a hitman, he not only understood why Sakamoto left, but wanted out himself and continues to walk that path alongside Sakamoto as a former hitman. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't work. The Bible clearly states that if you don't work, you don't get to eat. And Sakamoto didn't stop working either. He opened his own store and still provides for his family, making sure they have a place to live and good food to eat. Which brings me to a great side tangent with something I posted over on Twitter. This post showed Sakamoto's glow down where he went from an assassin to a family man, to which I replied, glow down when you get a loving wife, start a family, run a business, and stop killing people. This picked up a bit of traction, with people mainly commenting about how Sakamoto's weight somehow equals a glow down because he can't be a true family man because of it, which entirely disregards what we see in the show, where Sakamoto is still way more than capable of knocking people out and protecting his family from harm, which is exactly what he should be doing as a father and a husband. Sakamoto Days gives me the same feeling as when I watch Spy Family in how it shows the stark contrast between focusing solely on work and having a family. Work is shown as this dreary, depressing thing that everyone has to do, while having a family is a bright, cheery experience that everyone should experience. Now, some of that may be in part to Japanese propaganda to raise birth rates again, but either way, it still rings true. Having a family is a blessing, and being able to protect and provide for them is something most men dream of doing, and Sakamoto himself gets to do. And it's this emphasis on family relationships, a repentance to former life, and showcasing that human lives have value is why I think Christians should watch Sakamoto Days. That, and it also just being a really good action series with great animation, very clever fights, and an incredible soundtrack by none other than Yuki Hayashi, who also did My Hero Academia. This series is one I could definitely see getting much bigger as the anime continues to come out, but let me know what you think. Will you be giving Sakamoto Days a try? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I want to give a special shout out to all the YouTube members, since your support of the channel is what allows me to keep making videos just like this. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and drop a like so that I know to make more videos like this. I have a lot of fun making them, and I've got plenty of more series that I could cover. If you want to watch more, you can check out my video on how Mashal emphasizes the value of life, or this other video that the YouTube algorithm thinks you want to watch. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.